jump into this conversation with me. I think that is huge. Um, Lance and I went to school at Morehouse just a few years ago, a handful of years ago, and he's now Dr. Lance Shipman Young, and has done quite a few things at Morehouse, has been quite a leader in the community, but also as I watch him from afar, I see what he's doing to promote men's health, black men's health, his own health, and a lot of things that he's doing at the collegiate level really touched me. And what I didn't know until I reached out to him was that my son had been fighting to get in his class, his health class, and I had no idea. And when I told him that we were going to have a conversation, he was like, "Oh, I'm in Dr. Young's class," and blah blah blah. I was like, "Wow, that's really cool." So this is a fun moment for me, and maybe Lance gets to give us Dr. Lance Shipman Young, give us just a little bit about your background in general before we dive into this conversation.
Sure, but only if you call me Lance.
Lance,
All right.
Lance is.
All right. So for those of you who have joined again, thanks for taking out the time. I am Lance Young. My bachelor name is Shipman. So when we were students at Morehouse together, my surname was different. I did take my wife's last name. That's a story for, I think, another time. But I'm originally from Newark, New Jersey. Went to Morehouse in 1991, graduated in 1995 with a degree in chemistry. Did PhD study at Texas A&M, furthering my interest in chemistry. Did a postdoc at Emory School of Medicine before returning to Morehouse in 2003. So I've been a full-time faculty member at Morehouse for more than 20 years now. And of late, I've kind of had a career pivot, moving into the public health space more so than chemistry. So this has really allowed me to kind of spread my wings a little bit and have more touch points in the community as we talk about things that I think are important for not just Black men, not just men of color, but for men across the board. There are lots of topics that I think we need to address openly and honestly, and I'm not sure that we have productive conversations. When I say productive, I mean those types of conversations that will allow us to live lives that are healthy, happy, and long. So that's really where my interest is right now, and doing research projects around that, trying to understand some of the things that actually impact the decisions that we make when it comes to our health.
All right. Well, let's dive right in. I guess one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was just how did you find yourself studying chemistry and ultimately becoming so passionate about men's health in general?
Yeah, so those I think are two different stories that actually just converged serendipitously. So as a kid, I always was just fascinated with the physical world around me, right? So I would see magicians, and of course, in my mind, there's always a logical reason for everything that happens, right? So when I would see magic play out, I just always wanted to know what was really happening. And when I thought about chemistry, like if you throw two things together and they explode or they change colors, I just always wanted to understand the why. But not just to understand it, but to be able to have a hand in making new things happen, developing new chemistries or just new understandings of the world. So from a very young age, I just kind of dove in headfirst when it came to science. And then, I went to Morehouse thinking that I was going to become, some guru in the pharmaceutical industry. I was really interested in drug design at that point. But Morehouse actually changed my life in a lot of ways. But it definitely exposed me to different disciplines and different things that I could actually do in order to make a difference in the world. So that's, across the globe, right? Making a big impact on humanity, but more specifically, making a dent in terms of improving the quality of lives within the Black community.
Okay. And then how did that end? So what really got you passionate about, like, I know that you've been a professor at Morehouse for a very long time, but you haven't always had a health and wellness class for the students. So what kind of shifted you into that mindset? When and how long has it been?
Yeah, so I started teaching the men's health class about 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. And it was kind of thrown into my lap. So it was something I had been wanting to do for a very long time, but I had just been so bogged down with administrative detail. I was chair of the chemistry department at the time. So I just did not have the time to actually make the proposal to come up with a class that ended up being the men's health class. But it just so happened that one of my colleagues, a newly hired junior faculty member in biology, had a similar mindset, and he actually proposed the course, had it put on the books. He actually doesn't teach the course very much anymore, so I'm pretty much the only person teaching that course at Morehouse. So, I'm thankful to him, Ethel Vereen. So I want to thank him for putting the class on the books. But it is one that I have really taken up with passion, and to hear students talk about it, I think it's been a really good course for them to take, opening their eyes as to things that they can do now in order to further their lives and make sure that they, again, are going to live productive lives that have longevity, but that are also healthy and happy.
You tell me a little bit about, my son has told me about some of the topics that come up, as much as a son would talk to a father, but I'd like to hear from you, like, what are some of the subjects you cross over with the kids, or young men rather, and just a brief overview of some stuff.
Yeah, so it's a really comprehensive course, and right now I'm really struggling to talk about everything that we need to talk about in my mind in one semester. So I wouldn't be surprised if, in the years to come, that this actually becomes a 2-semester course, or if there isn't some other iteration of this course that is actually offered in the public health minor. But being comprehensive, we start off, it's actually comprised of modules. The first module is one where we talk about manhood, masculinity, and mental health. And it's intentional, and I think it's important that we start with that discussion. We're talking about young men who are entering the world, becoming independent, many of them for the first time, and discovering themselves in lots of different ways, discovering their identity, their sexual identity, all of it. Oftentimes, if there aren't the proper guardrails there, the way that they think about themselves as men can actually have a deleterious effect on their lives, and it actually can negatively impact their mental health. So we'll probably come back and talk a little bit more about that, but that's the first big major module in the course. Then we move into a discussion of diet, metabolism, disease, so that we can start thinking about how diet and exercise play a part in prevention, but also can serve a therapeutic purpose for people who are struggling with chronic disease. Beyond that, we move into cardiovascular disease and other things like pulmonary issues. Then we move into infectious diseases writ large, and then focus on sexually transmitted infections in the male reproductive system. But then at the end of that fourth module, we actually kind of turn the tables in such a way that the students then have to produce a work product that will educate the community. So one of the capstone experiences in the course is that they have to present a public service announcement as a video that can actually be posted on YouTube or disseminated to public schools or schools throughout the metro Atlanta area. And they also have to come up with a brochure that can be disseminated in a Black Barbershop initiative that I've been leading for a couple of years with my fraternity. But the whole idea is for them to become stewards of this information, be ambassadors in such a way that they too can have a voice and have an impact on the course of people's lives in our community.
Okay. And you sort of glossed over your fraternity. Maybe you could tell us which fraternity that is.
Yes. I'm a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. So I am 28 years in, still active, still financial, all that jazz. But I say that because, one, I'm proud of my organization, but also it's really given me an opportunity to do some really substantive work in the community. So this Black Barbershop initiative is one of several projects that we're involved in that allows us to really have an impact. Another has to do with service to the unhoused community, which is fairly substantial here in Metro Atlanta. So yeah, this has been a great vehicle for me to actually get out and do what I think is the Lord's work.
Nice. Well, so that kind of comes to, so you started talking about community and the different communities that you're involved in. Let's do the Alpha thing right now. Let's get it out.
I had to. It's all in the comments. I see them coming up.
I got a couple of brothers in our Broganza chat that are Alphas, and that conversation never ceases.
We love to see it.
Kappas. So when you think about the community in general, and that's sort of where I want to kind of frame our conversation around how important it is for you to have a community that sort of that you're able to tap into, that you're able to sort of recharge your batteries with? Um, and I want to know more about how you're using these community-based projects to inspire the young men in your at Morehouse or in your class, or how does it refill your cup? That's important to me as it relates to this community of Black men that I have been assembled with for a while now, post COVID, just sort of working out together, tapping in together, chatting together, supporting each other through, difficult things with family, work, all sorts of things. I'm just curious, how does the community that you're working with refill your cup and help inspire your students?
Yes, that's a good question. I think I want to talk about community in a few different ways, largely because I actually am a member of a few different communities, and each of them actually helps feed my soul in some respect, and I hope that I am contributing to them much the same way. So, I've talked about my fraternity, I've talked about my experience at Morehouse, and I will say that my students at Morehouse are my brothers, right? So I have a vested interest in their health, in their success, and they ultimately become friends of mine. Many of them have actually become friends that I hold very dear to me. So I just maintaining connection with them, which isn't always something that's easy to do because not all of them are always in the same space. This is true of brothers in my fraternity. Also, we're not always in the same place. People move about, but social media has been a great vehicle to make sure that we can maintain those types of connections with each other, continue to push each other when the chips get down, and we just need we we need fellowship, even if it's not where we can actually be in each other's presence. We can be in each other's virtual presence and provide support. So there's that, and even my gym community, right? So these guys that I have been working out with for like the last 15 years or so here at Morehouse. I mean, these have become my family, man. They're like my brothers, and they're not necessarily the same guys that I would be interacting with at Morehouse. Would have you come from different walks of life, but I think that is important too in terms of being able to um, how do I say this, to not empathize, but to be able to understand that there is value in everyone, right? That there are people who can contribute really great things to your life, even if they don't have the social cash, if you will, that some people might expect of them. And I'm trying to choose my words carefully there, because I don't subscribe to a lot of the notions that certain populations of people have to behave a certain way or have a certain value. The takeaway is that I have lots of different communities, like I said, that actually do feed my spirit, and I try to pour into them as well. I guess addressing your larger question, I feel a sense of purpose, and I always have. That God has actually put me here to actually be a steward of resources and to be of help to the people around me. That means the people that are in these communities that I'm talking about, but it's people that I've never met before. Wherever I am, I don't feel whole. I don't feel myself if I'm not in a position where I can actually give back to other people. So, as we start talking about communities, I mean, again, there are those people that I actually know and interact with. But the larger community is just, the people that I have the potential to touch or influence either with my words or with my work. So I just want to make sure that I'm being responsible and being impactful with both of those things.
Let me ask you this. So in any of those circles, and we talked about this earlier, just you and I one-to-one, about how difficult it can be sometimes to build vulnerability in long-term relationships post, say college or post high school. And how are you able to build like long-term connectivity? And how many of those groups, do you have real vulnerable relationships with? And how are you able to maintain that, having a family and all those things?
Yeah, so it's tough, and I think we talked a little bit earlier about how tough this can actually be, because if I'm being really honest with you, I haven't done well with it for a lot of my adult life, right? So I had been so focused on career or family or both that sometimes those relationships that I really cherished were ones that kind of fell to the wayside a little bit. I didn't cultivate them, so they began to kind of splinter a little bit. So I, being older, I'm more conscious of that now, so that I'm trying to be a lot more intentional about making sure that the people that are in my life know how important they are. And even if I'm not able to be in contact with them on a daily basis, to meet up with them regularly, just so that they know that at the very core, I love them, I value having them in my life. So I'm trying to get better about doing that. Um, it, I don't want to go too far off from what the question was. If you don't mind, can you just rephrase or just restate
Oh,
what
I
the
really,
original?
so I really just want you to kind of speak to the benefit of community. Like I, one of the values that I have when I think about what I want to do with these conversations, what I want to do with our, uh, what we call Broganda, which is a way of merging bros, yoga, and Wakanda all into one word. When we talk about it, we think of it as a safe space, a space where we can be really vulnerable, and when we need a brother, we can tap in and be close enough to have some real, impactful conversations. So I was really asking, how are you using those communities to just really be able to, like you said, when the chips are down, guys, we have a lot of surface
Yeah.
conversations. We talk a lot about a whole bunch of nothing a lot of the time. And when there's something that's really in our chest that we need to get off, we find we struggle. We struggle. Like you said, I think earlier you said, you may not tap in with a brother for a year, and we don't really worry so much about it. We just blow it off. But women may have a very, very different approach to that. Like they may be a little concerned if they haven't talked to one of their homegirls in a year.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just trying to understand how in your world, and maybe it's with the students at Morehouse, but my goal is to figure out ways to build more connectivity with Black men, not just Black men of a certain economic level or a certain age group or a certain, hetero, gay, bi, whatever. All of us, like, how do we find ways to be more connected and to build more authentic relationships? I mean, that's a lot of people think what we do is we just show up on Sunday for yoga. But to me, that's just a tiny part of the connectivity we're trying to create long term. So I'm asking you the same question, like in these communities, where are you able to just be really vulnerable? And when the chips are down, you know that there's someone there you can trust.
Yeah, so thank you for refocusing the question. I got a little emotional as I was thinking about the impact of losing some of the relationships that I had had in
Oh,
previous years.
good.
But to address the question more specifically, one thing that I rely on is just how men tend to interact with each other and when we tend to open up, right? So I know just from being a father, and just from my reading over time, that the best way of getting men to actually connect with each other and to actually be open and honest, to have discussions that they otherwise would not have, is through activity. So as I talked about my gym community, I think one of the reasons why we were able to bond and actually become a real family is because, we were always together and we were always doing things together. So when we're in the throes of physical activity and something else is going on in someone's life, during, in between sets or what have you, during that downtime, it's much more likely that they're going to actually open up about something or feel comfortable. It's almost as if they're disarmed by the activity, right?
Okay.
So again, Broganda is a great model for how this probably does work. I'm intentional about it with the men's health class too. So we have this boot camp that we do once or twice a semester where, there's no agenda other than we're going to get out, we're going to go to BT Harvey Stadium, and we're going to get a good workout in. In the course of that workout, though, I start asking questions, just, 1-2 word answers or sentences. What's bothering you right now? What do you just want to get off your chest? And, they'll do that in the midst of doing other exercises. And what I have found is that it's a great way of kind of disarming men so that they, will actually talk about the things that they otherwise would just kind of, um, stuff down inside. So that has been a really effective way, and I try to use it as much as possible. The other thing that I know to be effective is the power of anecdotes. I try to use my own story as much as I possibly can to try to be open, to be vulnerable, to try to open up so that other men will feel comfortable doing the same. And it doesn't always work, but more often than not, it will. When I say that, that means I talk about, the health challenges that I've had, and we'll probably get into that. I've talked about emotional struggles that I've had. I've talked about struggles that I have had with I don't want to say addiction, but a borderline addiction where I have had troubling relationships with certain stimuli in the environment. So, the more I'm open about those things, the more likely it is that somebody else who is experiencing the same thing is going to say, yeah, I've kind of dealt with this too, but I just didn't want to say anything about it. If I'm open and I can say, look, I dealt with this, I have gotten past this, or maybe I haven't gotten past it, I'm still a work in progress. The more important thing is to understand that, look, these issues that I've had, they don't define me, right? I've been able to kind of overcome some of these circumstances, and I'm telling this story to you so that you don't have to fall through the same pitfalls that I did. So I've tried to use both of those things, the power of activity and the power of anecdote, to really get men to kind of open up and talk about the things that are going on with them.
So then maybe this would be a good time to give us a kind of a brief, overview of some of the health challenges you've had and what you overcome. I know a little about it, through social media and through talking to other brothers. But maybe share a little bit about that, and then I'll share some of the things that I've been challenged with, and try to be as vulnerable as possible on a public stream.
There we go. So I'll try to give you the bullet points. So my mom in 2012 passed away from colon cancer. So I started at that point because she let the family know that she had colon cancer just maybe a couple of months before she actually passed away. So she had held on to it for a very long time and just didn't mention anything about it. So she kind of unexpectedly passed away from colon cancer in 2012. I mention that because a year later, not even a full year later, I started to have symptoms that I otherwise would have just kind of brushed off. Men being men, oftentimes will just kind of plow through things that we're feeling, pains or what have you, and say, yeah, I'll be all right. I'll have a ginger ale and I'll just move on, right? So there were some things going on with my digestive system. I had some issues with bowel movements, what have you. Long story short, I went, because my mom had passed away from colon cancer and I knew that there was a family history, I went and got screened, and it turned out that I had a fairly sizable tumor in my colon that required a colon resection. So I had to have surgery almost immediately after the tumor was discovered. Fortunately, the biopsies showed that it was not malignant. So when it was first identified, there was my oncologist mentioned that there was a pretty good chance that it was advanced stage just because of the size of it, but it turned out, not to be malignant. So praise God for that. But at that time, I was 39 years old, and I was, by all indications, the picture of health, right? So this was like around the first time that I started flirting with, competing in a bodybuilding show. So I was lean, I was muscular, I was like out running races, all that jazz. So to look at me from the outside, I probably looked like the picture of health to a lot of my friends and colleagues. But, there was a monster, so to speak, inside of me, right? So I think I have to be very transparent about that story because I do want Black men to take our health more seriously, to be a lot more proactive about our health, and to make sure that we get screened any and every time that we can for the things that are likely to threaten us. Colon cancer, as you probably have seen in the news of late, is the incidence of colon cancer have actually gone up considerably for people under the age of 50, right? So this used to be something that we considered as, something we have to think about when we get older, but especially in our community, it's something that we have to wrestle with now. The earlier colon cancer is also one of the more treatable forms of cancer if it is caught early, as was the case with me. So, 10 years later, I have no signs of any type of illness. I am well. I'm still lifting. I'm still running, all of that jazz. But again, it's because I found out early enough. And I say this because I guess it helps to connect me to my mom. I like to say that my mom gave her life in order to save mine. Because if she had not passed away in 2012, I would not have taken any of those symptoms seriously, and I probably would, have been dead in a couple of years.
Wow.
So I try to offer that anecdote again as, just a reminder of, one, for just how fragile life is, right? So we take for granted that we're going to be healthy forever, and we're not. But more importantly, where you have access to healthcare, use it. Use it. There is nothing wrong with actually going to see a physician. If nothing's wrong, great. But if something is wrong, you need to know so that you can get it treated.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, my parents have been relatively healthy for a very long time, and they didn't go to a lot of doctors and things of that nature. They're very active, kind of country folks that ate out of their garden and, all those things. But when the chips were down and they needed to go to the doctors, they didn't go. And now we're looking at, some things that we're trying to navigate that, I wish, they had been 10 years ago, just trying to manage some of this stuff. And even now it's kind of tough. And I think that's also a part of what this community that we established during COVID means to me, is just like tapping in with each other and encouraging each other. Because it's not easy. Like, nobody wants to go to the doctor to find out, I'm reminded of that, the lady in the Wiz, no bad news. Like, nobody really wants to get bad news. And I think, I come from a fiercely religious family that, they just sort of believe, you pray on it, and Lord will make a way, and, a lot of things like that. And I believe all of those things can be true. And the Lord could be saying, get your ass to the doctor right now, and medical treatment. And sometimes I fear that we lean on things that are a little bit more comfortable than going in and facing hard truths. Right. So, like, broke on the chat, we post all sorts of stuff. We post our, we encourage guys to get their colonoscopies. We encourage guys to show their workouts, as well as show their cholesterol and show their blood pressure. We just challenge each other in all sorts of ways. Now, some guys don't want to participate in any of that, but they still enjoy the connectivity of the group. And what I'm fascinated about is what did you tap into? What strength did you tap into? What community did you tap into when you found yourself dealing with something as serious as a tumor?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I'm really lucky, blessed that I had the community around me that I did. So that Morehouse community that I talked about, when I say that, I'm talking primarily about my classmates. I should say the Spellhouse community, right? So my classmates, my friends, really rallied around me. That gym community that I talked about, they all rallied around me. And of course, my family, right? So I can think of people. My sister came, she was at my bedside every day that I was in the hospital, when I had that colon resection. David Rice, my friend, brother, former roommate from Morehouse, he came and visited me just about every day. So, those people who loved me were there to support me. I knew I was not going through it alone. That made all the difference in the world to me. I didn't necessarily have to put out a call when people knew that I was, in distress. They just, came and embraced me, right? So I think setting up a community and really pouring into that community, cultivating that community, really does have a protective effect on you if and when something does go wrong, right? Because I didn't know what to do. I was just really praying to God, like, God, just get me through this. I will be your favorite son here on earth. I'll do whatever you want. Just get me through this. But as I was having those conversations, again, those people who love me embraced me and wrapped their arms around me in such a way that I felt supported. And it actually allowed me to recover a lot faster. So, having that support system around me allowed me to recover quickly. But of course, being fit, the fact that I went into that surgery, I was already almost competitive shape. I could have gotten on the stage at that point and probably competed in a bodybuilding competition. That allowed me to recover really, really quickly. So I was supposed to have been taking off 4 to 6 weeks before I was went back to the gym, and I was back working out after 2 weeks. Granted, I still had, I should not have done that because I still, was recovering from surgery, but still, I was able to, walk around. I was actually back teaching my classes in just about a week. So, I recovered really, really quickly from that surgery.
So then I would like to pivot and talk about fitness as it relates to mental health and wellness and everything. So sometimes, when I'm talking to brothers about health and wellness and whatnot, there are these comments like, hey, well, you're not going to live forever. You're not going to be here forever. So have fun now. I think sometimes people look at health and wellness and taking care of yourself as like some sort of compromise that, where you could be having fun now and not worrying about the future. What I liked what you said is that you were in decent shape. So when you did get sick, you could rebound. So that's the type of thing that I often think is missed. People don't realize that being in your best shape, because we're all going to get faced with something,
Mhm.
taking care of yourself so that you can compete, so that you can fight, it's kind of important. And I think about that as it relates to every single time I've had surgery for anything. When I was in good shape, and generally speaking, I would try to get back to whatever I was doing, even in a moderate capacity.
Mhm.
You're in decent shape, you can fight. You can fight cancer. You can fight some of these diseases. Now, that does not mean that you will somehow overcome every single obstacle, but you have a better
You're better
chance.
positioned. That's right. That's
And if
right.
your physical health is in decent condition, might also affect your mental health about the fight as well. And so I think about that when I think about Black men's health. I also think about I want to be able to enjoy just day-to-day activities to a decent level. And
Yes.
some people forget that feeling well is also it also just helps your day-to-day in general and just enjoying activities with your kids, with your
Right.
friends. And sometimes I think people forget that those are value adds. It's not about living forever. It's not about giving up every treat. It's just about feeling good in your body for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Is that what inspires you to start working out so fiercely, or was it just you just got addicted to it and you like the gains and you like the look?
So I think the latter is true now, but what really got me into it was survival. So by that, I mean, I grew up in Newark, but that's not what I mean by survival. What I mean is that when I went to graduate school, well, I went to Texas A&M, it was a real culture shock for me. So I was isolated. I did not have the support system that I just talked about that got me through the colon resection. I didn't have anything like that. I knew no one when I went there. And if you know College Station, Texas, in the 90s, it was a staunchly conservative environment, right? So, I mean, I definitely stuck out like a sore thumb. There weren't a lot of Black men. There certainly were not a lot of Black men that were in my program. And I just really felt isolated, and I started to kind of fall into a depression. And I was just trying everything I could in order to try to make myself feel better. And someone had mentioned at one point, well, maybe you should start working out. So I started to do that. And it sure enough became a stress reliever. It allowed me to kind of get, some of the anger out when I felt like, that there were these microaggressions that were taking place. It really helped to keep my mental health in order during that period of isolation. And sure, I get what people say that it feels like work. Why would you do it? Just enjoy yourself right now. But I mean, that's kind of like the inertia in the beginning. There's a barrier to it in the very beginning, but once you get into a rhythm, I really found fairly quickly that I enjoyed working out. I enjoyed lifting. I enjoyed running. I enjoyed the results that came from it, and it very quickly became a part of my lifestyle,
Got it.
such that within about I'd say less than a year's time, not going to the gym was tantamount to me not brushing my teeth, right? It just felt like something I had to do. And it's become a part of my life ever since. Now, sure, as the aesthetics started to come with consistent lifting, whatever. Yeah, I mean, that also keeps you in the game, right? It keeps you wanting to do it, keeps you motivated. But just as you said, look, I have 3 kids, and we started our family a little bit later than perhaps some of our classmates did. And I need to be able to, to exercise. I need to be able to outrun these boys as they're getting older, right? I need to be able to out tumble my daughter. I need to be able to, do things with them and their grandkids. I mean, and my grandkids, their kids when they ultimately have them. I want to have vitality for as long as I possibly can. So with that, I mean, it doesn't even seem like a chore to work out or to eat healthy. It's not always easy, but this food tastes good. But I'm able to rein it in and try to have kind of a balanced perspective as it relates to exercise and diet because I know what the end goal is. I just want to be able to live as long as I can, as well as I can.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's sort of the way I think about it. It's just the activity of living well, feeling good in your body. I see something in the chat. Morgan Tucker, I've always wanted to hear this story. You see today is not the Lance Shipman many of us knew in undergrad.
Amen.
Talk about radical transformation. It's cool.
I'm the same me in here, right? I'm the same silly guy that you guys knew, back in college. But yeah, the physical manifestation is perhaps a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, and Morgan's another guy
I
that
did.
Morgan is another
Looking
guy.
at the comments here.
No,
Sorry.
go ahead. actually I think I'm gonna sneak away to a little bit of a quieter space. So, yeah, give me one
Sure.
second to relocate my whole situation.
I don't know about doing a bid, but those 6 years in College Station absolutely felt like one.
Oh man. So no, and so when I think about uh, wellness in general, one of the things that kind of captures me is like the ability to, let's see if I can find a quiet spot over here. Just the ability to ward off illness, ward off stress.
Mm-hmm.
Many find ourselves feeling, overly stressed in a lot of different capacities. And I just wonder sometimes if I didn't have an activity that I enjoy doing, would I be able to ward off, those days where the stress just overwhelms you? I'm dealing with, aging parents right now. I'm trying to find the strength to manage a lot of the things that, they need from me. I don't think I could do it if I did not have, just a moderate amount of physical activity in my life to ward off stress. I just don't think I could pull it off.
So
And so, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say I think that's a conversation that we need to have as men, right? So we like to throw out phrases like "he's not heavy" or what have you, or that we can just kind of man up and accept any challenge. But the stresses of life get to us, right? As you're talking about your parents, I mean, the reality is, and I never thought about this 20 years ago. Is that as we get older, the responsibilities, they increase on both ends, right? You got your kids that you gotta be responsible for. You've got your family, your wife. You've also got your parents as our parents age and start to deal with illness. Sometimes there are financial issues that actually complicate that as well. And our parents, they go on to glory. Those are all stressors, right? That oftentimes we don't really talk about. We'll just kind of grin and bear it, move on and try to deal with the issue. But again, it helps to have outlets, be it physical outlets where you can actually exercise or do other things that are going to, kind of keep you centered. Or just to have conversations, just like, look, man, I'm hurting right now. I'm struggling. It's cathartic to just be able to have people that you can, say that to, just to kind of get it off your chest and then have them, just kind of bounce back that you're not going through it alone, right? Even though, it's basically your load to carry that, your brothers and sisters will be there to support you in any way that they can. That goes a long way. You get a lot of mileage out of that.
But how do you get guys to a point where they would even be willing to tell you that they're hurting? I mean, I find that like guys, we don't necessarily want people to know when we're hurting. I mean, I grew up in a family full of men that, were tough as nails dudes. And I just got home from Arkansas and spent a lot of time with one of my uncles who shared some stories with me that even my own dad has never shared with me. And he's sharing them with me now because he realizes my dad can or won't. And so I find that even in families, the ability to just tell someone you're hurting, connecting to men in such a way that you can wave the white flag. I find it's almost, I feel like our generation is just scratching the surface on this. Like, my dad wouldn't tell you he was hurting if he was standing there, and there was blood coming out of his sleeve.
Same.
So
Mm-hmm.
I just think about that and like, how do we, in this, age group we're in now, like I want to do way better than that. I want to and I want to teach my kids to do better than that. And so that's also part of this community that I'm trying to work with my fellows on. Just how do we just tell each other when we're hurting? How do we build enough trust and enough vulnerability that we can say, man, I need some freaking help.
Yeah. So look, what is encouraging is that every generation appears to get a little bit better at this, right? So the story that you tell of your dad sounds a lot like mine, right? So they just were not very emotionally open in many respects, and certainly would not volunteer if something was wrong. I think that our uh, contemporaries are a little bit different, and I certainly know that our sons, our kids, are different. They're a lot more emotive and a lot more expressive than our generation was. So I think there is some hope there. What I also think is true, though, is that we have to build the safe spaces, right? And it's not going to happen overnight, right? So with Rwanda, I think that's a great vehicle because, at the very beginning, I don't know that the expectation was that people were going to just freely share any and everything that was going on with them, right? You just wanted to get a place where people could actually connect, to feel connected and maybe get, some good exercise at the same time,
Yep.
right? But in that space, you continue to have like that cohort that always, comes together, begins to develop a sense of trust and cohesion, that becomes a space where people feel more comfortable and they can actually open up about the things that are going on with them. One thing that really helps that happen though is that there has to be someone who's going to have to kind of fall on the sword. Meaning, like for me, I'm in whatever space I'm in, I'm almost always the person that overshares, and I do so on purpose.
Yep.
Just so that I'm putting my story out there.
Yep.
And it kind of lowers the guard for other people to actually share things that are going on with them, because they might be wrestling with the exact same issues, or they might have something different that they want to share, but because you've been open about your struggles, they're open about theirs.
Yep.
But that comes with time and investment. It doesn't happen like right overnight.
No, you're making space by sharing. And, in our group, I know I overshare, but I feel like we've built some type of trust that I feel like the guys who, know I'm oversharing are just like, that's Will. But, this week we had a kind of a unique breakthrough where a brother shared something that I know 2-3 years ago we wouldn't have shared. I want to pivot one quick second, because I see I see our run coach from BMR, from Black Men Run Seattle, chiming into the chat. And I wanted to say that earlier you spoke about activities and how brothers can kind of let their guard down in activities. Nothing like the Sunday run with the fellas, and shit talking and whatever that comes through that. To kind of let your guard down. And I want to thank Coach for what he and Johnny create out here in Seattle. It's a beautiful thing. And like you said, brothers from all different walks of life come together for about 90 minutes, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But just
shout out to Black Men Run.
Yeah, Black Men Run. And there's one, it started in Atlanta, which
I know. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Have you ever run with those guys?
I have not, because they're too fast for me. But I have run races where they've kind of run as a group.
Yeah, well, they decided here that they run to the slowest man, so the strongest runners actually fall back. But I hear the Atlanta dudes keep it pushing.
Yeah, they definitely get their sprint on.
Yeah.
So I cheer them from behind.
Exactly. But thank you for talking about like that idea that it takes time, because I think that's also a piece that people forget, is it's the investment. And I read somewhere that, and I know I'm gonna mess these numbers up, but I read somewhere that as adults, it almost takes 3 times the amount of hours to build a new relationship than it did when we were in school. Meaning that I want to say that if I found the article again, I could probably quote it better, but it said something like, when you're in middle school or high school, you can, form a really close relationship in 12 to 14 hours of random events, like a really close relationship. 30 years later, it's like 3 times that amount of time, 3 or 4 times. So to build trust, you have to have 40, 50, 60 hours of like random meetups and, open engagement to just build enough trust to make a new friend. And I think that's one of the fascinating parts of this community of yogis / runners / guys that just like to shit talk and talk about all sorts of topics, from AI to politics to whatever. It's like over time we've engaged enough to build some real friendships, and if there's anything I'd like someone to take from this conversation, is that community that you invest in, keep investing, because it takes time. You said it takes time before people are willing to put something on the table that's really personal, and open up, and peel back that onion.
And look, and even when you create those spaces, not everyone is going to speak, right? And they don't necessarily have to. I think oftentimes the service is actually in being a part of the group and listening, so that other people just feel heard, right? So I think I need to put that out there, just because, again, that's an important part of it. People feel better when they're able to kind of get things off of their chest, but they also are served by knowing that someone is listening, and ideally listening without judgment, right? That I just hear that you got this. I don't know what the solution. I just want you to know that I hear you. I respect your struggle, and I love you, right? So that is enough in many cases to actually have people feel like they have built a connection within a group, and it becomes, a lot more organic for them to share after that.
Yeah. Man, I really appreciate it, man. I mean, we bounced all around a lot of different topics. I guess at the end of the day, like I keep saying, find your tribe, find your community, and I don't think it has to be, like our substrate was, yoga and fitness. I don't think it has to be based on that, but I do think finding a group of people that you can create some real authentic relationships with is just amazing for your health. I think that combined with the physical activity makes it great, but just being in really authentic relationships. You earlier spoke to feeling isolated when you went to get your doctorate. Was it?
Hmm.
You went,
Hmm.
so that feeling of isolation that you had in school, I think we're experiencing that post-COVID in a very similar way. If you're in corporate America, I think it's probably even magnified. We're all behind our screens. We're all in various cities trying to follow different pursuits. And then, like me, I get to a certain age where I'm looking at trying to slide back and help parents. The isolation is real. Like you really do sometimes feel like you are out on your own. And so finding a tribe that you can just connect with and lean into when you need them, I just think it's invaluable. This it's done wonders for my mood in general when things are tough.
Absolutely. And I have to acknowledge, since she just popped in, so one of I see you
I'm losing connectivity a bit.
in the chat. So those people who actually were a part of my village during that very trying time, I will never forget you. You mean the world to me. So again, where you were able to establish those connections, even if you haven't spoken to someone over the course of years, just wherever. Wherever and whenever you can, just reach out and let them know that they're appreciated and they will always travel with you as part of your journey. That helps to establish and maintain connections as well.
Well, on a lighter note, tell me about what your fitness work routine looks like right now, week to week. I'm kind of curious.
Yeah. So look, I'm kind of all over the place right now. It's getting warmer, so I definitely will try to run with my dogs like every day. So I'm trying to get out to get a couple of miles in with them. That's normally how I start my day, and then I'm in the gym. I'm blessed to say that I have a gym in my house now, so there's no excuse for me not to work out. I'm doing the bro split, so I'm pretty much working one body part a day. So I run, I work out, and then I go to work. So that's pretty much what the schedule looks like. But I built it in terms of time. It doesn't even feel like work. So if I have to get up a little bit early to do it, so be it. It's just like I got to get up early and have enough time to shower. I got to get up, have enough time to run with my dogs in the
And
workout.
do you have some buddies that you work out with as well still? Or
Not
is it
so
just so?
much. So it's me and my wife mostly these days. I used to have a crew that I used to work out at with LA. Sorry, work out with at LA Fitness. But with the pandemic, when gyms closing down, I kind of pulled away from commercial gyms and slowly but surely built
Yeah,
my own gym. And now I got everything I need here. So there's no reason for me to be paying for membership fees, but I can just work out at home.
I'll tell you that the pandemic definitely taught me how to work out alone. And it's interesting. I love group fitness because I know the motivating factors of being in a group. It's why CrossFit blew up. It's why every gym sells the group fitness. When you walk into a gym, they walk you by the group fitness rooms. You see people having a good time. That's what sells it.
Yeah,
Um,
I miss
so
that energy now. I got to be honest. I really miss that energy.
but that's sort of interesting because when I think about the reasons I started doing yoga online with a bunch of dudes was I still miss the connectivity. Um, Even during the pandemic, like it took me years to feel comfortable going back into a yoga studio. In fact, it really only recently happened that I started doing, yoga again in rooms.
Mhm.
But man, I'll tell you, learning to work out alone was a unique challenge during the pandemic because I was used to being in cycle classes. I was used to being in but I figured it out. I figured out how to work out alone. So if there's one takeaway, I guess, from the pandemic that was a negative was I learned how to, craft my own workouts and, figure out a way to create an online yoga class so I could connect with my bros. So
Yeah.
that's been cool.
Yeah.
Well, we are about at our time. I want to thank you, man. Thank you for having this conversation with me. I love what you're doing at Morehouse. I love what I hear from my son and others about your health and wellness class. I think the work you're doing is hugely impactful. I hope those young men really understand the value. I wish we had a class like that when I was there, because the subject matter that you tap on, I know we lightly touch the surface of it. Those are real things that we need to be talking about, man. So hats off to you, brother. You're doing that. You're doing that Lord's work for real.
Thank you. And we both are. So again, the service that you provide with Brigada is amazing. So iron sharpens iron. I'm sure you've heard that a million times before. But yeah, thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about what we're doing, and hopefully those who have been watching us, feel a bit more compelled to take their health into their own hands, and if nothing else, to find a community where you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah. Find that community you feel comfortable sharing. I think that's the takeaway I want everybody to take away with. All right, brother. Well, man, thank you. And hey, I'm going to invite you to one of our Sunday classes so we can catch up. I don't know what you do mornings, but I got to get you out at least one time.
Okay.
And all right.
You got me.
All right, brother. Talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, Lance.